Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Kid Dracula, brought to us by Konami. The sequel to the Japan-only Famicom Kid Dracula title has us once again controlling Kid Dracula as he tries to take out the evil Garamath. While Garamath worked as the main villain for both Kid Dracula titles, he would actually appear in one of the later Castlevania games as one of the bosses in Symphony of the Night, though he does end up having a much different appearance than his cartoony appearance in this title. Kid Dracula is basically a parody-style world to the Castlevania universe, with a lot of the characters and creatures appearing in it that you battle throughout, but with a much more chibi and kid-friendly kind of approach to everything. While it doesn't have quite the dark atmosphere of the Castlevania titles, that doesn't mean that this game still isn't an absolute blast to play through. Playing as Kid Dracula, you earn multiple different abilities throughout the course of the game that you then have to use in order to help you not only take out enemies, but also traverse the levels. There's 8 levels in total, and you gain all the abilities by the time you make it through level 4. Every level concludes with a boss encounter, and there are some story elements here and there to break up in between the levels, as well as mini-games that you can play in. When you start the game, we have our opening story before we jump into level 1. As we jump into level 1, you can see that there's some quite good detailing on the character designs, as well as just the overall graphical styling of the title. It has that still very Castlevania-esque feel to it, with the up and down moving spike crushers right at the very beginning, bats and zombie-like creatures that we're going to be battling. You start off with just 2 moves in your arsenal, the ability to transform into a bat for a short period of time, similar to what Alucard was able to do actually in Castlevania 3, and this can help you traverse some areas a bit better. Some areas you have to use it in order to get over longer gaps, but it doesn't let you take as many shortcuts as the bat power did in Castlevania 3. You also then have your main fireball attack. Now for this attack you can charge it up and blast enemies with it, or you can just attack them straight on for a quicker attack. By charging it up and blasting it at enemies, you'll do more damage, as well as they will drop a coin. You then gather the coins and use it for the game's mini-games. There's 5 mini-games, 4 of which you can earn extra lives, and one of them being for extra coinage. And these mini-games are pretty different from one another. When we get farther in the game, I'll play each one of them once to showcase each mini-game, but for the large portion of the game, you really don't need to play all of them that much unless you're really low on lives. When you climb up this ladder, if you go to the left, you'll find a flashing heart which will replenish all of your heart containers. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, not only do you have what ability you currently have equipped labeled right above the amount of lives you have, and then on the right side you can see how many hearts you have and the total coins that you have. The center icon of Kid Dracula himself kind of signifies when you're charging up, whether or not you're charged up enough in order to do moves, and there's a little bit of animation to that. I love the artwork of Dracula. I assume Dracula in the background, the portraits here. And here's the first time we're going to use the bat ability to kind of help us fly over to this right side and go to the next screen. Outside here, I'm going to use the bat ability again to kind of help me fly over some of these up and down moving weighted platforms. When you're on one side, of course, the other side comes up. and you have to make sure that you're able to get over to the next platform while one side is up in the air. This is something that was a real pain in Castlevania 3, but much easier here in Kid Dracula. On the last screen before the boss, we have a snoring, sleeping moon in the background, which is pretty cool, and then we battle the ghost boss. Now, this ghost boss is broken up into 3 different, ghosts that you get to fight. The first one starts off by slowly bouncing his way around, pretty easy to take out with a couple of charged up shots. He'll then be quickly replaced with a bigger version of the ghost who will do the same thing. This boss is actually reminiscent of the one that was also in the Famicom version, though not all the bosses from the Famicom version end up making an appearance, just a handful of them. Now this one fires some fireballs, moves back and forth, and then after he's taken care of, an old ghost appears. You cannot hurt the ghost. Instead, you just want to jump over him, and then jump over him again when he retreats, and then he'll end up collapsing from exhaustion, and you move on to level 2. At the end of a level, after you're done with the minigames, you'll get to see the world map, and then kind of see where you're located next for the next stage, and then jump into that level. I love those animations, though. I'm not only like that ghost dragging away the old one at the end of the level, but also the bat and his like whole facial expressions while you're talking to him before you end up getting all 3 of the bats to join you for the bat attack. I like that they also show you each of the moves before you end up jumping into the next level with them, so you can kind of see what each one does before you select it or try to use it in the levels, and decide which ones that are best for you. For the most part, unless it's an ability like Bat, I usually just stick with the charged up ability for the normal shot, as well as the bomb ability that you get later on. In this segment, you walk along the top portion and you gotta keep firing at this flower in order to kind of slowly move him back. You just gotta love the animations, like I said earlier, not only for those cutscenes, but also like just something like this, that eye bulge that ends up happening each time you end up delivering a hit to one of these flowers. Now, you can try to fly over it, but unfortunately, when you try, it just still moves the flower automatically, which is actually a good thing because the owls that kept spawning during that segment will hit you every time and you'll end up falling, so you can't really speed up that area very much. Now, in this segment, you have a few fish that pop out of the waterfall in the background, as well as you have to move across these logs, some of which, as you can see, darkly colored, will end up falling when you land on them, as well as there are some logs in the background that kind of roll over the background. If you run into those, they will end up hurting you. When you make it a little bit farther in, you'll hear the music kind of change a bit as you then have to run across a series of bridges that all fall apart as you run across them. This can be a little bit difficult, probably the most challenging thing we've dealt with so far. You have to have a couple of nicely timed hits so you can hit the other fish that are popping out of the waterfall. You can fly through small segments of it, but it's best just to do the run and get across it that way. Now, coming up, though, is the best boss in the game by far to me. Some people may see it and think, oh, look, there's a Jason character. But no, this is clearly a reference to Rick from Splatterhouse. He uses an axe for his first form and will try to run back and forth hitting you with it. If you do some nicely timed hits, you can prevent him from swinging at all, which is very similar to what you end up dealing with him, not only in Splatterhouse games where you get him as a weapon, but also when you end up playing as him in Wonpaka Graffiti, the Famicom-only Splatterhouse title. His second form has him with a shotgun. He'll go on the roof, and you'll have to move out of the way and jump up and hit him or fire up straight up at him. Sometimes he'll jump off the roof and run around that way, eventually returning to the roof, but it won't take too many powered-up shots and he goes down, but clearly my favorite boss of this game. Now, for completing level 2, we do get the homing attack, which does exactly what it says it does, and that's home in on enemies, though, like I said, I still will pretty much be using just the normal attack for most of it. This is a cloud-based area, as you can see, as we have to move some platforms around with some clouds, including happy ones, and ones with some pretty expressive faces on them as they're moving downwards or upwards, depending. They sprinkle some coins everywhere, so you can grab some of those if you would like some extra coins for the minigames. Now, the large portion of this level is this roller coaster segment. Start off by jumping on it. If for some reason you end up jumping off of it, there's a few platforms along the way that you can jump off onto. If you do so, the roller coaster comes to a complete stop, so you can easily get back on it. There's a lot of enemies here. It can be easy to get knocked off by some of these enemies. Sometimes you may want to duck when going around some of the loops and such as that, but there's really only a handful of them that are going to pose a direct threat to you while you're on it. This is a pretty lengthy segment as well, so you have to always make sure you don't end up getting knocked off. You're going to have to redo it. Here we have to deal with probably the hardest enemy of this segment, and that's this guy on the cloud who throws lightning bolts at us. You can hit him away from you, and his second part, where we fight him a little bit later on, is a bit more challenging to deal with him, but basically your goal is really kind of dodge more than anything else. If you're able to dodge his attacks, eventually he will go away as you make it farther onto the roller coaster track. As you make it into the next segment, you'll have a whole bunch of lightning bolts spewing down, which will knock away part of the roller coaster you're on, and now you're battling the lightning bolt throwing guy again. It can be a bit difficult during this part especially to be able to dodge the way out of those lightning bolts. You want to make sure that you stay at a good position on the roller coaster itself, so that if you do end up getting hit, you will not get knocked back off of the roller coaster. While you can hit him, and eventually he'll retreat, if you just wait a little bit, eventually he'll go away anyway as you make it farther onto the track itself. During the end segment here, be ready to jump off of it to a farther away piece of roller coaster, but for the first couple of parts it's going to kind of bounce around, move from track to track, but eventually you'll have to make that jump. Once you land safely on the other part of the roller coaster, you continue along your path, but also get some health, thankfully. You get a full heart replenishment. I love the UFOs and their inclusion, very similar to the Gradius or Parodius games, and there's some other little references here and there to other Konami titles throughout. You'll make a big giant leap at the very end of the roller coaster, automatically controlled by the game, in which case you then land for the boss fight, which is a giant chicken. The chicken flies up above. He will from time to time stop and throw little tiny chickens out at you, but your goal will remain the same of throwing fireballs up at him. Every time you're able to deliver one of those full hits, so you actually prevent him from firing the other little chickens out. This is also a good spot if you would like to gather some coins, you can, because by hitting him a whole bunch, you'll gain a whole bunch of extra coins. Then you'll have to fight the egg itself. Just a singular egg. It doesn't take many hits. It just kind of bounces around, but be careful, because once it hatches, after a few hits, 2 more little chickens roll out, and then that's the end of the level. Like I mentioned, there are 5 minigames, and the first one we're going to try is guess the number. Basically, you bet on what you think is going to come up as far as the numbers are concerned, and then you pay 2 coins per one of the bets, and then it rolls around, random number is picked, and you can earn some extra coinage that way. While I don't win anything here, I will then just move on to the next level, and when I gain some more coins later on, I'll then come and do some of the minigames. Like I said, I'll play each one of them once and try to explain it the best I can. Level number 4 starts off on a broken down pirate ship, and watch out for the cannons at the bottom portion firing cannonballs up at you, of course. A little bit into it, you'll have these rotating platforms with these little mini boat platforms as you jump across them. Right afterwards, some more cannons, as well as more of the witch Grim Reaper-esque enemies. In fact, we'll fight a giant version of that thing as we make it to the end of the stage. One of the more annoying enemies during this segment, though, is the shielded ghost guy, who has a spiked shield and a lance, and he comes charging towards you. A nice full charged up shot from your normal shot will instantly take him out. In the next segment, after a skeleton, you'll start running into these up and down moving crushers that you will have to move across. This is also the introduction of the upside down ability for the first time, and you'll have to use this to be able to get past this thing here, or you can technically, I guess, jump or fly across it, but easier to use the upside down ability. But be careful at any point with upside down. If you end up going through an opening, like where these barrels are coming down, and fall into that opening, you will end up dying as if it was a pit, so you have to be a little bit cautious of that. This segment here is probably the toughest. You have those platforms, famous from Castlevania. When you jump on them, they spin and you end up falling through them. You have some cannon enemies, but also you have those annoying shielded ghost guys. Use the upside down ability here to get over, and then take out this guy next. The problem with the abilities is you don't get your charged up attack when you're using one of the other abilities like upside down or bat. But you want to use it here so you can get across here and find another one of these heart replenishments to get another heart container. Once you've grabbed that, then go back to the other side, jump up here, and then after kind of spinning around a little bit, eventually head back over to the right. Because of the way these enemies work, it can be annoying, like I said, because you have to constantly change what ability you have, but either way I can kind of get past them just barely enough to get through the rest of the segment, and move on to the next screen, which happens to be the boss encounter for this level. The boss is one of those big versions of the witches I mentioned earlier. It moves back and forth at the top and will throw the sickle out at you, which will then retract. It's pretty easy to kind of dodge that portion. You can keep firing up quite a lot of fully charged up normal shots up at the boss before you drop it off screen. The second part, though, is a bit tougher. It's a giant robot, so be sure to switch over to your upside down ability, flip up to the roof once the robot appears on screen, and then start firing your small shot out at it. A lot of the times, the giant arm that it then extends from its body will miss you because you are upside down, and kind of the trajectory of the arm itself will a lot of times be able to get past you. You can still get hit a little bit if you're not too careful, but overall this is a pretty easy fight if you're able to kind of use that upside down ability and get up there, as you can only hurt the boss by hitting it in the head. Now the next level has us going upwards to begin as we're making our ascent up into kind of space here. There's a whole bunch of moving platforms and you have to jump all around back and forth between them without accidentally falling down. This will test your platforming Kid Dracula skills, that is for sure. There are a few enemies on some of these platforms, so you don't want to go too fast while going through. Usually you can tell when one of these platforms has an enemy on it, but still you want to make sure you have one of those shots ready so you can hit it before landing safely on the platform and don't accidentally get knocked off of the platform down into the abyss. After a couple of just standing robots on them, you have a couple more guys that end up kind of flying, some space rocket guys that will come up, but once again they're easily dispatched by using that fully charged up normal shot. When you make it to the top here, you have a whole bunch of UFOs. Sometimes aliens even pop out of the UFOs. This is a great opportunity to use that charged up shot and rack up those coins if you would like to play the mini games, because there's quite a lot of stuff going on here. Just make sure that you take out the aliens when they end up landing, but this is kind of like the first form of this boss. Then the boss actually makes his appearance, and it's actually a puppet version, a robot suit version of Garamoth, the final boss of the game. For this boss encounter, get your bomb ability out and hit him like directly in the chest or in the head with the bomb. The explosion effect will end up damaging him until eventually you knock off the head of the suit. Once that is gone, the alien inside of him will still control the suit, every so often popping out to say hello. It doesn't take many shots here, but he doesn't pop his head out very often. He moves back and forth, sometimes will then retreat, do a big leap. The bombs that he throws out can be a bit annoying to try to jump in between of them, but overall it's just kind of waiting for that opportunity to deliver another shot. Once he pops out, deliver one more hit using the bomb or whatever attack you're using, and you move on to the next level. Since we've got a bit of coinage though, let's play a couple of the mini games before we end up moving on. When you go into the Play Lives mini game, you'll have all 4 of the crystal balls at the bottom, each labeled with a letter. You can find out right before you end up mixing them all up, which one equals which, so you can figure out which game that you want to play. Then they all kind of get shuffled around. Pretty easy to know where they are. I'm not sure what the necessity was to kind of do this. Maybe just add a little bit of extra flair to everything. And then pick the game you want to play. First up, we're going to be playing Game A, which is Grab Bat. Basically, you have Kid Dracula with a net, and your goal is to catch bats. The more bats you catch within the 30-second time limit, the more extra lives you get. They thankfully do tell you how many you're going to earn per bat caught and all that stuff. Pretty easy, simple minigame. One of the easier ones. There's 2 really easy ones, and then the other 2 not so much as far as gaining a decent amount of lives. This isn't the easiest. We'll be playing that one next up as far as minigames, but still a pretty simple one. Nice little distraction, earn those extra lives in case you ended up needing them. Usually I can end up getting around 10 bats or so each time as I'm moving back and forth and collecting them. Sometimes the hit detection's a little bit off and weird when it comes to getting them, but you should be able to catch enough to at least get an extra life or 2 before the time runs out. Now, next up, we're going to play this fun game where we have to pogo and pop balloons. If you pop the wrong balloon, you end up getting a lose, like right here, the first couple I hit. But every other one you hit, the correct balloons, you end up earning an extra life. So as you can tell, you can earn a lot of extra lives by playing this minigame just a few times, as long as you don't keep popping the wrong balloon. But honestly, just a few pops of the correct ones and you'll have more extra lives than you'll know what to do with as far as the game is concerned. Now, thankfully, I still have enough coins to play one more of the minigames. I'll have to wait until my next time around to play the final one, but trust me, you're not really missing all that much by not playing every one of the games. The last one I'll be doing is my least favorite by far. But next up, we're going to do Game B, which is Stick'em. Now, what Stick'em is a game of chance, complete game of chance. You have a skeleton in a barrel, you have to place swords within all of the openings. The more swords you're able to get into the barrel before the skeleton loses its head, the more extra lives you end up earning. And since it's a complete game of chance, it's very difficult to kind of have a strategy really going in. I usually just kind of move all around and pick different spots until eventually I end up losing. Once you insert into run the wrong spots, though, his head pops off. Pretty funny, actually. And then you get to see how many 1-ups you ended up earning. Moving on to level number 6 is a fire-based area. Plenty of fire not only lining the ground for us to fall into, there's jumping fireballs, and then these huge giant waves of fire that go between two different pits. I like to use fly a bit during this segment to help me kind of traverse a little bit of a bit easier, but you still have to watch out for some of the fireballs that are kind of bouncing out, especially in the smaller corridor areas. Unfortunately, running into one of the fireballs will knock you out of bat form, so be ready. And when you have those big waves, a couple of them will go, and then you'll have a small pause in between more of them, so you can try to get by. Unfortunately, I'm not able to squeak by there, so I end up taking quite a bit of damage during this segment. But it's one of the tougher, I would say, especially as far as this game's concerned. Now, next up, you have volcanoes in the background. Now, it'd be smart to use the umbrella ability that we just ended up gaining a little bit ago to help us through this, but a lot of times I'm stubborn and I just like to stick with my normal attack ability while going through here. Unfortunately, there's not the greatest hit detection when it comes to some of the stuff, just because you have a very small window to kind of sneak through. Right after that segment, though, it's already time to get towards the boss. You have some jumping little lions at you before the boss begins. For this boss, you have one part of the platform will descend just a little bit. When it does, make sure that you get to where that is, duck down, and then wait for the boss to fly overhead or run overhead. He'll then bounce his way up into the air and go behind the scenery of fire for a nice little cool effect, as well as he'll also throw out one of the little mini fire lion guys as well, so be sure to take out those guys before descending back into whatever pit ends up appearing. Takes quite a lot of hits, but overall a relatively easy battle once you get kind of the hang of where you need to go and how you can easily duck underneath of the boss itself. Be cautious though, because when you do end up delivering that final hit to the boss, he will break apart into 4 of those little mini versions of himself, so be ready to take those out, because if they end up hitting you, they can still end up killing you and you have to redo the whole fight. Since I did earn enough coins, it's time to play the last of the minigames, my least favorite by far, and it's a rock, paper, scissors, but not just a simple rock, paper, scissors. Instead, what you have to do is win the rock, paper, scissors, and then you have to attack your opponent. If you attack, but you didn't win the rock, paper, scissors portion, you get a penalty. 2 penalties or fouls, and you end up losing and the minigame is over. You have to get 5, though, and actually win 5, and then attack 5, in order to actually win. So, a lot of times, just because of the very short window that you end up getting when you end up winning, or once a round ends after you do the rock, paper, scissors, I end up attacking early every time. Like right here, I ended up just attacking even though I didn't win, and because of that, I ended up getting that penalty on me. You can dodge your way out of the way of your opponent's attacks if they end up winning, but like I said, I just get kind of frustrated pretty quickly with this, and I usually don't end up playing long enough to earn an extra life. Like I said, my least favorite, and if you're looking for a lot of extra lives quickly, I would definitely suggest any of the other ones, especially the balloon popping one. But either way, I want to showcase it, of course, and now we're moving on to level 7, as we have 2 levels left here in Kid Dracula. Now this level truly ends up testing your ability with the bomb power-up that we ended up getting, as you have a lot of walls that you're going to have to break, and quickly move through while you're exploding these walls, because you'll end up getting crushed a lot of the time. It starts off pretty simple with just stand-alone ones. You'll then have ones that end up falling from the ceiling, so be sure not to get crushed accidentally by these, as they do end up coming down. Thankfully, the bomb ability works really well to take out enemies, so like the robots and other stuff that you're dealing with should be able to easily be defeated with a couple of well-placed bomb attacks, so you don't have to worry about switching between your various abilities and then quickly switching back when you make it to that next wall. Now, this is the segment where it really tests this ability. You start off with just one single column, but quickly, not only do they change directions, but you'll have multiple columns in a row. It's all about picking the best spot possible in order to quickly get through and get to safety. I suggest, especially like with ones like this, if they have a stagnant wall, blow apart that wall before attempting to go through and get away safely and get to that next segment where you're going to have to be doing the same. If you do get crushed, you don't just get hurt, you do end up losing a life. So this is probably the toughest segment, and why having a few extra lives built up, especially from the mini-games, ends up being a bit of a good idea, especially your first time playing the game. This will really test your Kid Dracula skills, or patience, whatever you like to call it. Now for the next segment, you want to keep your bomb ability equipped, use it to destroy the robots throughout, but a lot of what you're going to have to be doing here is destroying some blocks at some key moments in order to make sure that you don't get crushed by the ceiling. As you can see, it has started to move up and down. Right here is one of those spots. You want to destroy the 2 blocks directly above you so that you can safely duck into the little crevice and then continue along the path. Dropping down a bit, you can destroy this block if you want to. It doesn't really matter. Either way, the ceiling will stop for a few seconds. After you walk a little bit farther, it will continue to move up and down. Destroy this block here, and duck down in between, and then move quickly over to the right. Now, it will start to crush, but when you drop down here and then it kind of collides, it's kind of blocking your path a little bit, but there's some hearts above if you want. Either way, walk over to the right, and you'll transfer to the next screen, and time for the boss fight. Now, for this boss, what you have to do is use your bomb ability to knock blocks back at him in order to do damage. He'll do the same to you by jumping up in the air, trying to just directly hit him. It's kind of a tug-of-war thing going on with each of you trying to attack the blocks. If it makes contact with any part of his body, it does end up doing damage. There is 2 parts to this fight, though. The first fight ends up ending, and now a ladder appears, and you can do the same by knocking blocks at him. Staying near the top will usually net you well. If one comes towards you, you can kind of fire it directly back at him. He will then retreat and then move himself back up the ladder. If you end up getting knocked off, just quickly jump back onto the ladder and keep hitting him until you knock him down one more time and complete the boss fight. It's now time for the final level of the game. It starts off with a bunch of platforms together. Some have spikes on them. It's a bit hard to kind of get between some of them as you're moving through. Eventually, you'll make it to the end where they kind of stop as you're progressing on through. If you run into a spike, thankfully it's not an instant death or anything. It's a bit difficult to make some of the jumps because of the way the momentum works, that your kind of weight ends up bringing you down on a few of them, but it's a pretty short overall area. Right afterwards, be sure to have your charged up ability, or the bomb, whichever one you prefer, to take out a bunch of the robot enemies before making it to that next screen. Now, once here, you have a whole bunch of these gravity things that kind of push you up really quickly up into the air. You want to choose the correct ones to kind of make it through without accidentally running directly into spikes, though it can be a bit difficult sometimes to transfer between a few of them. Now, while you can only have 5 heart containers in the game, there is another heart container in this area, which I will show. It's a bit hard to get to, you'll take some damage, but thankfully you get full health back when you end up grabbing it, so there's no really any harm in me going after it. Getting past a couple of the spikes, though, is a bit difficult. You can see they're like kind of just barely ended up clipping the side of that spike as I was trying to manipulate my way through. Here, use the bat ability and fly up a little bit so that you can end up hitting another one of these boosts and continue upwards. Here's where you'll find that next heart container. As I end up getting hit, I try to make my way through, but like I said, it's a bit difficult at times to do so. And then I switch to the bat and just end up just touching the spike. It's pretty touchy when it comes to that hit detection there with those spikes. Either way, right above that, I'm going to choose the middle one to kind of ride up as much as I can. Eventually, I'll transform back out of my bat form, but that will lead me to the very top. Make sure that you just hug the wall a little bit so that you get off at the very end. You don't clip the spikes above. And then in the next room, you have all these drills Some of them will come down behind you and some of them in front of you. You can kind of tell when one's going to come down in front of you, so wait for it to do so before attempting to go past it. In the next segment, you have these crab-like creatures moving up and down on different paths, as well as the ground and ceiling will kind of like move up or down on some of its platforms. Nothing really too challenging other than the one like right here that ends up going away, and there's a pit there. But outside of those, it's a pretty simple area. Right after that, though, you will have some more of those drills kind of chase you down. Stop and let them kind of fall down, or let the one in front of you kind of stop, and just keep repeating this until you're able to get through and grab yourself a heart replenishment right afterwards. Now, for this segment, hit this dinosaur dragon-like guy a couple of times, defeat him, and then switch to the umbrella ability and immediately use it, and then just charge forward. Do not stop running forward. The enemies in front of you will jump up into the air and instantly be killed, and if you slow down at any point, you will end up getting crushed. So you just want to use that umbrella and run your way on through, and then it's time for the final boss fight of the game. The final boss has two forms to him. The first one starts off by forming overhead and then flying up into the air. He has two attacks, one with two lasers on the left and right side of his hands, and you can move either away from him or just get in between the two lasers, and then he'll fire a diagonal one right directly underneath of him, so you'll have to move out from underneath of him. After he does this attack, though, he will open up his mouth, and this is where you're going to be able to deliver hits to him. When he has his mouth open, a fireball does come out, though, so you have to make sure you dodge out of the way. You can hit him with two full charged up shots if you like, but you're going to end up taking damage from those fireballs if you end up doing so, like I just did there. So sometimes if you have full health, it may be worth it to sacrifice a bit, though that second form still is going to happen, so you do need to manage your health a little bit. Overall, though, the first form is pretty simple to take care of once you kind of learn the speed at which the boss ends up moving, so you can get those nicely timed shots in to do damage. The hit detection on the fireball has to be a bit precise, so also kind of get used to where exactly you're throwing it up at him, because the second form is the same deal, except he's moving when he opens up his mouth, so it's a bit harder to hit him. For the second part of the boss fight, he starts jumping around. It's pretty easy to kind of get underneath of him and away from him. Get used to this pretty early because there's a lot of short jumps he ends up liking to make. When he does a giant leap overhead, though, this is when he's going to open up his mouth, allowing you to throw those fireballs up at him in order to do damage. This is really all there is to this boss fight, though, so you just have to kind of get used to being able to dodge out of the way. Alucard, Kid Dracula here, doesn't move at the speediest of speeds when it comes to kind of getting away, so sometimes I end up getting clipped by his arms, so that's why you want to keep at least a couple of hits before going into this form of the fight. It may end up taking a little bit of time and patience, but eventually you'll deliver that last hit and can sit back and enjoy the ending, the Kid Dracula. So there you have it, Kid Dracula on the Nintendo Game Boy, a game that I'm glad I discovered a few years back before it got a little bit pricey as far as Game Boy titles are concerned, but it's one that I definitely can recommend checking out if you've never given it a try. This and the Famicom version, though. The Famicom version has that trivia game in it, which is a little bit tricky, especially if you're playing it in the original Japanese and not the fan-translated version of the game. But Kid Dracula, an absolute fantastic little game for the Game Boy. Konami really was one of the better developers when it came to handheld titles for the Game Boy, getting kind of the most out of the system, that is for sure. With some great gameplay, good music, and just some awesome graphics overall. I love the facial animations of the characters throughout the course of this game. A lot of just life given to these characters. So after a little bit more of story, kind of teasing at another game, which unfortunately we never end up actually getting another game in the Kid Dracula series, and the way Konami is nowadays, unfortunately, probably never going to happen, but I really wish it would. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up this episode of Play It Through. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a thumbs up or commenting down below. If you enjoyed this playthrough, be sure to check out the Famicom version I did a couple of years back, a fan-translated version of that one. Or if you want something a little bit different, I just recently covered the prototype of the unreleased Bio Force 8, which is a really interesting game with just so much speed and some awesome animations, especially for an NES title. I also, of course, need to thank all the members of my Patreon. Without your guys' continued support, I wouldn't be able to keep doing what I'm doing. So, if you enjoy the videos and would like to help out, not only do you get your name here, but there's also some other benefits to it. You can click that little Patreon button at the bottom. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for the continued support, for watching this video, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.